Assalamu alaikum, what is up YouTube? The Prophet Muhammad, upon whom be peace, he lived 1,400 years ago. And he claimed to be a prophet of God. He claimed to be a messenger from the Most High. And Allah sent him with many signs and many miracles, one of those being the events of the future that he foretold. And that is what we're talking about today. The prophecies of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam.
أفلا تعقلون.
Allah says in the Quran, speaking about himself, عالم الغيب فلا يظهر على غيبه أحدا. He, Allah, is the knower of the unseen, and he does not reveal this knowledge to anyone إلا من ارتضى من رسول, except to those who he has chosen as messengers. Now, if Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam made prophecies and he claimed them to be from God, and these prophecies, they're not vague. They're very clear, very precise, very specific, sometimes specific to individuals, sometimes specific to nations. And they're not limited to, one area. They're from different areas of expertise like geography, infrastructure, finance, warfare, different areas. If he was a liar, if he was making all this up, he would never ever attempt to give prophecies like this, because if even one of them failed, then this would disprove his entire message and he will be exposed and called out for it. But this was not the case for Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam. In fact, these prophecies, because of how unimaginable, unpredictable, how crazy they are, is the reason why today some people are converting to the religion of Islam, because they see that this could not have come from any other than a messenger of God. There is no way that he, Muhammad, 1,400 years ago, sallallahu alayhi wasallam, would have known this. So whoever's watching, open your mind, open your heart, and listen to the prophecies of the Prophet Muhammad, sallallahu alayhi wasallam. 1,400 years ago, the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, he made a prophecy that we can see today being fulfilled. He said that when the last hour draws near, you will see the lands of Arabia revert back to meadows and rivers. SubhanAllah, he's saying two things here. First of all, he's saying that these lands will become meadows and rivers in the future. And the second thing he's saying is that they were once like that. They were once meadows and rivers. He said they will revert back to meadows and rivers. In 2014, a team led by Oxford University made a startling discovery. They discovered a huge 325,000-year-old tusk belonging to an extinct species of elephant. And in their paper, they said, picture the Nafat Desert, and it is almost impossible to imagine it as anything other than a place of heat, wind, and sand. Yet scratch beneath the surface, as an international team of archaeologists have been doing, and there is evidence of a green and wet landscape where huge animals once hunted and foraged. SubhanAllah, with all their advancements in technology, they only now discovered what Allah revealed to the Prophet Muhammad 1,400 years ago, that these lands of Arabia were once a green and wet landscape. Now for the other part of the prophecy where he said that these deserts will become green again in the future, here is what NASA had to say about it. And NASA posted this back in 2012. Here is what some of these Arab lands look like as of recent. So not only did the Prophet Muhammad tell us about history which was hidden deep in the ground for tens of thousands of years, but he also accurately foretold what would come of these lands in the future. How could he have known this? Maybe he guessed. Okay, fool me once, let's listen to another one. A man came to meet Rasulullah and asked him some questions. And at the end of those questions, he asked him, when will the hour be established? And Rasulullah, he replied to him saying that the one who is asking knows no better than the one who is going to reply. But I will tell you about its signs. He said, when you see the barefoot Bedouin Arabs, not just any kind of Arabs, these Arabs who live in the desert, camel shepherds, specifically these Arabs, he said the hour will not come until you see these Arabs boasting and competing with each other about the construction of tall buildings. Now let me ask you, my friend, where is the tallest building in the world today? Dubai, Burj Khalifa. And in fact, the third tallest building in the world today is in Saudi Arabia. That's the Mecca Clock Tower. And Saudi are even planning to build a tower that's going to be taller than the Burj Khalifa. It's going to be 1 kilometer high. And it's funny because 50, 60 years ago, these lands, Saudi and Dubai, they were deserts. They only were able to build these infrastructures because they found oil. They got the money. So tell me, how could the Prophet Muhammad have known this 1400 years ago? There is literally no way. It makes no sense. Like, do you even know Bedouins? Bedouins are like campers. They're nomadic. They don't have a place. And either ways, Arabs weren't even known for these kind of buildings. At that time, if you were to make a prophecy about people building tall buildings, he would say that about the Romans and the Persians because they were the superpowers of the world at the time. At the time, this prophecy was far-fetched to say the least. And the Prophet Muhammad never even encouraged stuff like this. He lived a simple life and he always warned the people of the dangers of gathering, of accumulating unnecessary wealth. In fact, the Quran itself discourages such behavior. Allah says, "Do you build on every height a monument?" So how would the Prophet Muhammad have known this? And if you didn't know, in order for these tall buildings, these constructions to be made, many of the ancient mountains around Arabia had to be demolished. And this is also something that the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ foretold. He said that the hour will not come until the mountains are moved from its places. And what's crazier is that this was something that was never even possible, never imaginable up until the 20th century with the invention of explosives. And now we see this all the time. Mountains are being blown to bits so they can make way for infrastructures, for highways and buildings and bridges. The Prophet Muhammad, he said 1,400 years ago that there will come a time when usury, riba, that's interest. There will come a time where it is so widespread that even the one who tries to avoid it, even the one who runs away from it, will not be able to avoid its dust. Subhanallah, this is exactly the case today. It's almost impossible to avoid riba. I mean, it's crazy. Just think of it today. How many people have interest-bearing accounts? People that buy things using credit cards, VAT, mortgage, sports betting. Wallahi, it's crazy. And even us, the Muslims who try to stay away from it, and even non-Muslims, we are all influenced by the banking systems who are drowning in interest-based debt. And what's more mind-blowing than this, wallahi, is the fact that interest on a global scale, on a large scale like this, was totally impossible, totally unimaginable, because for interest to be on a global scale like this, you need something that doesn't have intrinsic value. You need something like paper money or e-money, like the digital money you have in your phones and your bank accounts. And at that time, even for hundreds of years after, they never had anything like this. Their wealth was in gold and silver. But today, now, the banks can just keep printing the money and borrowing more money to more people and drowning more people into debt. And this thing of, paper money and e-money is something that had never happened in the history of the world up until a couple hundred years ago. So again, I ask you, how could the Prophet Muhammad have known this? 1,400 years ago, the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, he said that the hour will not commence until people mate in the streets just like donkeys mate. And his companion, he said to him in shock, "Ya Rasulullah, will this really happen?" And the Prophet Muhammad, he said to him, "It most certainly will." And this is the case today, especially in the Western liberal countries. You will find multiple police reports of people having sex in the streets, having sex in public. And this report even says it exactly how the Prophet Muhammad said it, like animals. And the levels of sexual perversion and immorality is at a level that has never been seen before. They say that a man with his phone and the internet today has more access to naked women than a king would have ever seen in his entire life over 100 years ago. Also on the internet and in television, everything is being hypersexualized. We're being bombarded with explicit sexual imagery on social media, on TV, even in advertising, bro. It's crazy. And Rasulullah, he also prophesied the outcome of such immorality. He said that never does immorality become prevalent among a people to the degree that they practice it openly, except that the epidemics, the diseases become rampant among them, which their ancestors had never seen before. And wallahi, this is the case. The first thing that comes to your mind is HIV and AIDS. Subhanallah. The Prophet Muhammad, he prophesied the countries that will become Muslim, the countries that the Muslims would conquer. And when Rasulullah made this prophecy, he and his followers, they were in a very weak state. So it's not like he was, doing well and he was making these claims. They were literally didn't know whether they were going to live tomorrow or not. They were in a battle against the Arabian Peninsula, 10,000 men. The Muslims, they were outnumbered 3-1. Allah even speaks about their dire situation in the Quran when he said, "They massed against you from above and below. Your eyes rolled with fear. Your hearts rose into your throats and you thought ill of Allah." There, the believers were sorely tested and deeply shaken. And on that day, the Muslims were trying to build a trench and there was a rock that couldn't break. And at this point, the Muslims with their hearts in their throats, not knowing whether they were going to live tomorrow or not, the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, he picked up the spade and he said, Bismillah. Then he struck it the first time, a piece of it came out, and he said, Allahu Akbar, I have been given the keys to Ash-Sham, which is the greater Syria region. He said, Wallahi, I can see its red palaces at this very moment. He struck it again and he said, Allahu Akbar, I have been given the keys to Persia. He says, Wallahi, I can see the white palaces of the Madain. He struck the rock for the third time and he said, Allahu Akbar. He says, Wallahi, I have been given the keys to Yemen. I can see the gates of Sana'a while I am right here in front of you. And this happened exactly as it was revealed to the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. 12 years later, the Muslims conquered Ash-Sham. As I said, that's the greater Syria region, consisting of countries like Palestine, Jordan, Lebanon, Syria, and they today are all Muslim countries. 27 years later, the Muslims conquered Persia, which is modern-day Iran. And even as early as 5 years after Muhammad made this prophecy, the Muslims, they conquered Yemen, and today it is still a Muslim country. And what is more astonishing than these prophecies is the way it happened. You see, the Byzantine and Sassanid Empire, Rome and Persia, they were the superpowers of the world. Maybe like in present times, maybe like America. And in the Caliphate of Umar ibn al-Khattab, these two superpowers, they teamed up, even though they were going at each other's necks, even though they were fighting each other, they teamed up against the Muslims. 100,000 men against Khalid ibn al-Walid's 20,000 man army, radiallahu anhu. And the Muslims, they went on to win the battle and conquer these lands. Like what are the odds? How could the Prophet Muhammad have known this? Do you know how many things could have gone wrong? He wasn't even alive. This wasn't even in his power. The Prophet Muhammad also prophesied other countries that would become Muslim, like Egypt, Constantinople, which is Turkey, and India. Aisha al-Mu'mineen radiyallahu anha narrates a hadith where Rasulullah was on his deathbed. Then Fatima, his daughter, came in and he whispered something to her that made her cry, made her weep. Then he whispered something else to her which made her laugh, which made her happy. And Aisha, she asked Fatima what made her cry. But Fatima radiallahu anha, she refused to tell Aisha. Then after Rasulullah had died, after he had passed, Aisha, she asked Fatima again about this incident. Then Fatima said that Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam, he said to her, the angel Jibreel used to come to him and revise the Quran with him one time every year. But this year of his death, he came twice. And Rasulullah, what he understood by this is that his time has come. And this was why she cried. Then Rasulullah, he said to her that, why are you crying? You should be happy. You would be the first of my people, first of my family to join me. Then he said to her, are you not pleased? Are you not happy to be the queen of the believers in paradise? And when he said this to her, this is what caused her to laugh. In fact, Imam al-Nawawi points out that this is actually two prophecies in one. The first is that he foretold that this sickness, because he got sick a lot of times, Rasulullah, but he foretold that this particular one is the one that is going to take him, the one that brings his time. And he prophesied that his young daughter Fatima was the one who would be the first of his family to die after him. And it happened exactly like this. In fact, she only lived for 6 months after his death. One time Rasulullah was on the mountain of Uhud with Abu Bakr, Uthman ibn Affan, and Umar ibn al-Khattab radiyallahu anhum ajma'in. The Prophet Muhammad, he said, upon you is a prophet of Allah, a Siddiq, a truthful person, and 2 martyrs. So he predicted that Umar ibn al-Khattab and Uthman ibn Affan, because Rasulullah, he is the Prophet of Allah, and Abu Bakr, he is Abu Bakr as-Siddiq, he is Abu Bakr the truthful one. And of course, this happened exactly as Rasulullah prophesied. Abu Bakr, he was the first caliph, he died of natural causes. Then Umar ibn al-Khattab radiallahu anhu, he came and he was killed. So he died as a martyr. Then Uthman ibn Affan, he was the next caliph and he was also martyred. He was also killed. So again, I ask you, how could the Prophet Muhammad have known this? And for the last prophecy for today, the Prophet Muhammad, he said that when this Khosroe dies, there will be no Khosroe after him. And when this Khisra, when this Caesar dies, there will be no Caesar after him. Meaning that when the present Khosroe, I hope I'm not butchering this pronunciation, he will be the last Khosroe. There will be no Khosroe in Persia after him. And when this Caesar dies, he will be the last Caesar, the last Kisra. There will be no Caesar of the Roman Empire after him. And this is the case. The last Khosroe who rose to power in Persia was during the Prophet's lifetime. His name is Yazdegerd III. And the final Kisra, the final Caesar of Rome, was Heraclius III. And he also lived in the Prophet's lifetime. This saw the end of the respective empires. They were the last to rule over these empires. And brothers and sisters, ya ikhwa, this is how you know that this man Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam, وَمَا يَنْتِقُ عَنِ الْهَوَى, He does not speak of his own desires. In huwa illa wahyun yuha. It is nothing but revelation revealed to him. And if you still doubt the message of Muhammad, then tell me, explain to me, how could he have known? Just explain. Let me know, like, how could he have known? Like, try your best, bro. Cook something up. So wallahi, the message has come to you. The onus on you now is to accept or reject the message. The ball is in your court now. It's your play. And wallahi, I'm not saying accept Islam because I was born Muslim, or because I have big shoulders. Wallahi, no. I'm saying accept Islam because Islam is the truth. And wallahi, if you need resources to learn about Islam, click the link in my bio. There are free resources, free books to learn about Islam. Read the Quran. If you're in Nigeria and you need a Quran, send me a mail. I will send you a translation of the Quran in English, totally 100% free. And as always, if you have any questions, DM my Twitter, DM my Instagram. They're always open. And inshallah, soon I will start the live question and answer session for non-Muslims, inshallah, who are interested in Islam. Sincere people. No, I'm not coming here to argue. I have a life. So may Allah make it easy for us. And I will end this video with a verse from the book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
سنريهم آياتنا في الآفاق وفي أنفسهم حتى يتبين لهم أنه الحق. أولم يكف بربك أنه على كل شيء شهيد. ألا إنهم في مرية من لقاء ربهم ألا إنه بكل شيء محيط.
And that's it for this one. Assalamu alaikum.